Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. May the humanity that is within every human be held more and more precious and be regarded with ever-deepening reverence. Welcome to today's All Society platform. I'm Jasper Drizin-Khan, and I'm today's platform chair. I've been involved with Washington Ethical Society for nearly 18 years and served as president for YES 2021. My pronouns are she and her. Ethical humanist congregations provide the benefits of traditional religions, such as inspiring community and providing support, a commitment to shared values, and deeply meaningful engagement with people and ideas. But we do this without prayer or traditional ritual. All are welcome to attend and participate. We are presenting today as a webinar, so microphones are muted and attendees' cameras are not sharing video. We invite you to use the chat function for casual comments and the Q&A function for questions directed to the presenters. Questions will be answered at the end of the platform.
Ethical humanism, ethical culture, is a humanist movement focused on human goodness and building ethical relationships with each other and the earth. As a non-theistic organization, we do not concern ourselves with the existence or non-existence of a deity, but instead embrace the diversity of our membership. Hi, I'm Levi Liga, and my pronouns are they, them. I've attended the Washington Ethical Society for 16 years, and this is my second year participating in YES. I will be next year's YES Vice President. Ethical societies are diverse, ethics-centered communities of caring people dedicated to deed before creed. The American Ethical Union embraces these core values for our children's programming. Every person is important and unique. Every person deserves to be treated fairly and kindly. I can learn from everyone. I am proud of this earth. I cherish it and all the life upon it. I learn from the world around me by using my senses, mind, and feelings. I am a member of the world community, which depends on the cooperation of all people for peace and justice. I can learn from the past to build for the future. I'm free to question. I'm free to choose what I believe. I accept responsibility for my choices and actions, and I strive to live by my values.
Hi, I'm Trish Cowan-Williams, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm a member of the Ethical Society of St. Louis, and I'm also working with the AEU to help connect and support different societies' ethical education program directors. The YES Conference, as you'll hear today, is a long-standing tradition within the American Ethical Union. It's an annual conference that brings together high school age teens from ethical societies around the country. The conference is organized and led by teens. I've had the pleasure of attending YES conferences since 2007 and helping the teens with the logistics of the conferences since 2011. The YES conference is truly a special thing. As I said, it's almost entirely teen-led. During the planning and implementation of the weekend-long conference, we see many teens step up to lead in small and large ways. The dedicated chaperones are there for support, but remain on the sidelines while the teens lead the show, keeping to the agenda, handling any issues that might come up, managing group discussions and dynamics, and facilitating the program. It's a beautiful thing to witness. Our 2020 conference was held in Washington, D.C. It was March 5th through 8th, and by the following weekend, the whole country had suddenly shut down because of the pandemic. What timing! I love that the last in-person large group I got to see was these teens. When we began making plans for YES 2021, we knew it would have to be virtual. What we didn't know was if it would be well attended. We decided that we would be happy with whatever happened, even if it meant that only the planning committee were the ones who showed up. To our delight, we actually had 28 teens register and attend our virtual conference. In fact, it went so well that we decided to add a virtual conference to our fall calendar, keeping our traditional in-person conference in the spring. Our planning committee is made up of 4 elected officers and a handful of representatives from various societies' youth groups. This year, all 4 of our officers and several of our other planners were seniors, so they had a lot to manage on top of the YES conference. They worked so hard so that teens in the AEU would have a meaningful conference and uphold their favorite traditions and activities. I'm always impressed by our teens and their creativity and ability to lead, but this year I am wildly impressed that they had such a successful YES conference and are hosting today's platform. The youth groups in our ethical societies have certainly had challenges this year, as have all of the ethical education and society programs in general. Our youth group advisors have really thought outside of the box to bring their teens what they needed during this time. Bergen's youth group had only 2 teens in it this year, so they didn't have a lot of activities, but several of their alumni were home during the fall semester, so they hosted a reunion in October. 4 graduation classes were present. And now we'll hear from a few folks about what their youth groups have looked like over the past year.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Linda Irizarry, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm fortunate enough to be the team coordinator of the Washington Ethical Society in Washington, D.C. And this year, since taking on this position in November of 2020, our youth have been busy. We've been offering monthly programming. In December of 2020, we had a socially distanced ugly t-shirt competition where we definitely got to see the creativity of Wes's youth. In January of 2021, we offered 2 service projects. One was in conjunction with our Earth Ethics Society and our BSA troop. And then the second service project was making hygiene packages for We Are Happy Period. In February and in March, we had theme presentations. We had a waffle competition and discussions, and also we had movie nights. In April, we had another socially distant activity where our youth got to be Earth Day advocates. So one youth made a poster for Earth Ethics, and another youth made a poster. Made a poster. In May, the first weekend in May, we had a mental health talk in observance of Mental Health Awareness Month, and the following week we had another movie night. To top off June, we will be doing another socially distanced event in the middle of June just to wrap up our end of year activities. Some of our activities have had about 2 to 6 or more youth present, and this youth seemed to enjoy each of the activities that were presented. Each week, I send out a youth blog, which contains a weekly meditation idea from Soul Matters, and also there are youth events announcements that are also included on that blog. So Wes has been definitely active and busy since December of 2020, either via Zoom or socially distant when we can do that. And I'm looking forward to what next year will bring for the youth at Washington Ethical Society. Thank you so much.
Morning, everyone. My name is Bella Burzak. I'm a member of the Mid-Rivers Ethical Society. My pronouns are she, her. I've been a member of Mid-Rivers for 13 years, I think. And while we have continued our weekly platforms every Sunday through Zoom, obviously our SEEK activities have been a little bit limited this year. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. In 2020, throughout pretty much all of our SEEK classes, we focused on the United Nations 17 Sustainable Goals, and you can see them in the slide here. So every week we would kind of choose one of these goals and either talk about ways that we can achieve these goals in our own lives, or other ways that other people throughout the world are trying to achieve these goals. I remember we were talking about clean and affordable energy. We were talking about efficient modes of transportation and different kinds of public transportation that people are trying to achieve all across the world. Next slide, please. Some of the service projects that we engaged in were tree planting. So I didn't attend that one, but as you can see, a lot of our SEEK members and Ethical Society members did attend that. We participated in microlending through a program called Kiva, which is a really, really cool program. You can kind of create an account through the program, and there's all different countries you can choose from, and individuals that ask for loans for either education or medical reasons, or for starting a business. And you can donate money to their cause, and then you can, like, then when they start earning an income, then they pay that money back, and it's just sort of a cycle. You can donate that money to, you know, other causes. We spent a few SEEK classes making blankets for the crisis nursery. So we brought in a ton of fabric, and we just started making smaller blankets for the crisis nursery, which is sort of a it's a place where parents can bring their baby when they just when they're unable to care for them. So next slide, please. Obviously, this was quite a year for social activism, and we participated in that. We went to a few marches. We went to a Black Lives Matter march locally here that was, I think, organized through my school, actually. Next slide, please. As I said, we kept our platforms going throughout the year. We had youth leaders for the platforms. I was one of them. My brother was one. So we just had different SEEK members host and lead those platforms, which was really cool. Next slide. We had a few SEEK outings. Every year we have a family retreat. This year it was at Johnson Shut-ins. And obviously we had YES. There were 4 members this year who went to YES, myself, and the 3 other individuals you can see in that picture. It was in DC, and that was my first year attending, and I had a really, really great time. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ellen Wright. I am the co-advisor of the Ethical Society Youth Group at in St. Louis. My co-advisor is Dennis Roach, but I'll be speaking on our behalf today. My pronouns are she, her. The youth group of the Ethical Society of St. Louis in non-COVID times meets for 2 hours a week on Sundays for discussion, games, and other activities. Our last normal meeting occurred prior to the YES conference of 2020 in Washington, D.C. In March 2020, we began meeting on Zoom. Our weekly meetings initially were around topics that addressed our new circumstances. We watched videos about managing life in isolation and discussed our concerns regarding our uncertainty about school, family, and friendships going forward. We talked about ways to stay connected, how to support people who may be more isolated than others, and what we could do now that all our typical organized activities were basically canceled. During the period of March 2020 through May 2021, Youth Group maintained weekly meetings on Zoom with a few in-person socially distanced outdoor activities interspersed. We presented 2 Youth Sunday platforms on Zoom to the full assembly of the Ethical Society of St. Louis and attended the YES conference online. Our usual program season is from September to May, but some of our teens felt it would be valuable to keep meeting throughout the summer, and so we did. Our time together each week was not always structured around a specific discussion topic. Our primary goal was to create a space for teens who already had a lot of online education to have a relaxed social opportunity. Our goal this past year has been to keep that space open regardless of how many teens show up or choose to participate. Some chose to just attend sporadically, and our group of 15 diminished to an average of 5. We did explore a variety of topics over the year, and some aimed at current events and coping in a complicated time. We shared a lot of our own personal passions, sharing links to videos, books, and podcasts we enjoyed. Our topics ranged from the protests sparked by the death of George Floyd, the psychology of why people are drawn to drama in their entertainment and personal lives, cultural appropriation, how fiction influences reality and vice versa, what happens when we sleep, and utilitarianism, just to name a few. We did manage to get out of the house and offline occasionally. We had several socially distanced picnics at Targrove Park, took trips to the St. Louis Zoo and the Missouri Botanical Garden, and we have an upcoming trip to the St. Louis Art Museum. Our teens also spent a little time learning about and promoting 2 local organizations, the Little Bit Foundation, which provides educational resources to at-risk kids in St. Louis, and Back at You, which provides backpacks of supplies to our local unhoused community members. It's been a challenge staying connected and keeping up enthusiasm during this time, but I'm very proud of the efforts of our teams to participate at the level that they could, and we look forward to a future in-person meetings back in our own little youth group room sometime soon. Thank you.
Hi, we'd like to share some new youth programming that's being developed for young ethical learners. Simone Barros from the American Slavery Project and Audrey Kindred from the New York Society for Ethical Culture have created new programming for teens and tweens to have serious fun Zooming as social and racial justice scholars. We are ethically exploring how can we make and ensure a more humane future for all? Why does our culture suffer such persistent racial injustice? And how can you, youth, be an integral part of the racial healing of our culture? We're looking at a social and racial justice timeline of American history, examining social and racial roots in America's history. The American Slavery Project is a theatrical response to revisionism in American discourse about enslavement and its aftermath. Hey, enslavement, that was a long time ago, right? What does enslavement have to do with our lives today? The concept of race was invented when? Why? For what? Huh? And what is this? The racial wealth gap. And what is the solution? Gabriel, a participant in our program, says, "This group has been the foundation of me becoming a better person. I hope that this group can reach its teachings out to more people." Marifer says the social racial justice scholars lets us talk about very serious issues from the past and present, about the crappy things humans have done in history. And it helps us learn how to stand up to these issues, all through engaging conversations and creative audio plays. Youth in our program are staring American history in the face. Frankly, they are growing justice. And the youth who are doing this hard work are building their ethical fitness. Please salute them with a high peace.
Hi, I'm Porter Cowan, and I will be doing this. Before our main address, we like to take a moment to let go of extraneous thoughts and to calm our minds and bodies. I invite you to sit comfortably and take several deep, slow breaths for 1 minute of mindful breathing.
We will now have participants from the Youth of Ethical Societies conferences speak about our experiences at YES. First up, Ellie Owen and I will talk about what YES usually looks like. And after that, Caroline Coughlin and Jesse Cohen will talk about YES 2021.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie Owen. My pronouns are she, her, and I've been a member of the Washington Ethical Society for 7 years. And I've been vice president of the YES conference for the past 2 years. So YES is an annual conference for young members of ethical societies throughout the country. We alternate between DC, St. Louis, and New York every year for our conference location, which allows us to visit other ethical societies, but also to explore new cities. Some of my favorite YES experiences have been going to the St. Louis City Museum and visiting Central Park. Every year at YES, we have a central topic that we talk about. Some examples from the past few years include prison reform, the education system, and government abuses of power. Our president, vice president, and office plan to decide on the topic of the conference and to discuss subtopics as well. We come together in small groups to discuss our personal feelings about subtopics, and we also speak in large groups to learn new information about our topics in general. We try to foster a community of respect and inclusion, where we can speak up and share our opinions on topics that may be important to our lives, or ask questions about something we feel we'd like to know more about. I've learned so much from these past few conferences, and it's really nice to be able to talk about social justice issues with other people from around the country. It's really interesting to learn how much we have in common. That's why meeting people from other ethical societies has been one of my favorite aspects of the conferences. The conference is just a great opportunity to make friends with people and to have fun. We like to include plenty of games in downtime so we can enjoy each other's company. As for my personal experience with the S, I've been going since my freshman year of high school. And in my sophomore year, I was elected to be vice president of the conference. Throughout my years of attending the conference, I've been able to meet so many amazing people and share my values with others. By far, my favorite conference was the 2019 St. Louis conference. I really enjoyed learning more about prison reform and talking about it in small groups. It opened my eyes up to the problem of mass incarceration in the US and how it affects children and families especially. But I also enjoyed our 2021 conference, where we discussed the education system in America. It was great to hear about our experiences with school this past year and what the transition was like from regular school to virtual school. Our conference was pretty unconventional this year, but we all came together and we were able to have an amazing time. This conference has also taught me to come out of my shell and embrace the leadership opportunities that have been given to me. It's helped me become a better communicator and a better leader in general, and it's made me realize how amazing it can be to have a leadership position like this one. It's really exciting to help plan the conferences and also to lead new conferences as well. I have loved the opportunity to meet new people and show them how special YES is. 2021 is my last year as vice president of the conference because I'm going to college next year, but I'm very happy I had the chance to experience YES, and I know I'll never forget about it. Thank you so much.
Hi, folks. Hi, folks. Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Jasper. I've been a member of WES for my entire life, and it's a community I'm so grateful to have grown up in. I've participated in the YES conference for 4 years now, and I've been a leader for 2 of those years. I can't even begin to describe the impact it's had on me, but I'll try. So going into my first YES conference back in 2017, I was pretty nervous. I didn't know anyone that well. I didn't really like speaking in large groups, and I knew very little about current events, but that all changed rather quickly. Everyone was so kind and welcoming, I immediately felt at home. Getting to explore a new city was so much fun since we switched between New York, St. Louis, and DC every year. And I've been lucky enough to attend an in-person conference in each city. At that first conference, the theme was resistance, and we talked about resistance in all its forms, from reproductive rights to police brutality. I didn't share much at first, but after seeing how candid and outspoken everyone else was, I began to open up. By the end of the conference, I had gained a newfound confidence, made some truly meaningful friendships, and learned a ton along the way. My second YES conference had a particularly significant impact on me. This was the 2019 conference in St. Louis on the US prison system. It was there that I first heard the words prison industrial complex and first began to understand our prison system as a modernized form of slavery. We learned about and discussed the ins and outs of our country's prisons and their multitude of flaws: privatization, prison labor, the school to prison pipeline, sexual assault, solitary confinement. I could go on and on. That conference sparked my interest in dismantling our prison system for the very first time. And if it weren't for YES, I wouldn't have found my purpose and passion in life: ending mass incarceration and abolishing the prison industrial complex. I was the representative from DC for my third conference, where we focused on government abuses of power. I absolutely loved my position. After falling in love with YES throughout my first 2 conferences, it was so rewarding to be on the other side of it all. I led discussion groups on immigrant detention centers, wealth inequality, remnants of colonization, and rape culture. It felt so good to encourage my peers to think critically about issues they might not have considered before, which is one of the main objectives of YES. This year, we faced some distinct challenges, considering that our conference had to be held online. However, the planning team and participants really exemplified the saying, making the most out of a bad situation. After being in Zoom classes for about a year, my expectations were really low, but I was overjoyed when everyone showed up on Zoom on a weekend with open minds, ready to talk about important issues. The topic was our public education system, and we had some truly fantastic dialogues that I can't wait for you all to hear about. It was also the first of many online YES conferences to come, as the 2021 conference launched a new tradition of having a mid-year virtual meeting in addition to our regular annual conferences. Aside from the social justice element of the YES conference, it's the little things that really make the difference. Things like the sharing circle, a time when we all sit in a circle in a dark room and are free to share any thoughts or feelings we may not have another outlet for, as well as warm fuzzies, an activity that starts with a funny skit followed by a sharing of kind words about each other. These traditions make it nearly impossible not to bond with your fellow ethical peers. On top of that, the special moments that happen on the perimeter of the conference, an internal realization, laughter between friends, or conversation about a social issue that occurs outside of the discussion groups. These are the things that rounded out my YES experience and made it so fulfilling. And of course, none of this would have been possible without the inspiring and tireless efforts of Trish, who goes above and beyond each year to make YES fantastic for every single attendee, and whom I'm infinitely grateful for. YES has been such a worthwhile and valuable experience for me, and I'm so glad to have had this incredibly unique opportunity throughout my high school years, as I truly would not be the person I am today if I hadn't attended YES.
Hi, my name is Jessie and my pronouns are she, her. I'm in 9th grade, so this was my first year attending YES, and I have gone to the Ethical Society of St. Louis since I was born. For YES 2021, we weren't able to do the tradition of traveling to all be in the same place, so we took the conference to Zoom. While the inconveniences of traveling for the conference were avoided, the virtual environment posed new challenges, such as shorter attention spans, slow internet, and noisy households. Nevertheless, we took advantage of the virtual environment through doing a Kahoot survey, doing virtual icebreakers, having large group discussions, as well as using the breakout room feature on Zoom for small group discussions, and using Google Forms to carry out elections for next year's YES officers. We elected Porter, Levi, Robin, and Kat. Our theme for YES 2021 was Public Education in America, kickstarted by a presentation and discussion on Friday night led by James Croft, leader of the Ethical Society of St. Louis. We talked about the origin of schools as well as their purpose. We discussed how they can both encourage uniformity and also spark creativity. Throughout the conference, we talked about some of the large problems with schools in America, some of which have arisen or became apparent during this pandemic. We categorized them into 4 main categories: sex and gender issues, race issues, mental and physical health issues, and history issues. The first issues we focused on were sex and gender issues. We divided into 3 breakout groups to participate in discussions led by Jasper, Abby, and Bella. Because of a lack of bathroom and locker room access, inclusive anti-bullying policies, support from teachers, inclusive sports policies, and inclusive history curriculums, the majority of students at our conference agreed that schools did not provide enough support for LGBTQ+ students. We realized this was important because schools can be a make it or break it situation for LGBTQ+ students, depending on whether that support is provided from peers, on whether their peers and teachers provide them support, which often isn't provided at home. Unfortunately, for those students looking for that support from schools, quarantine and social isolation can put them in a difficult and potentially dangerous situation. We feel that our schools need to do a better job of showing support for LGBTQ+ youth and creating a more welcoming environment and curriculum, even through virtual learning. Our personal experiences in sex ed classes varied due to there being no clear national standard for a curriculum, but altogether the classes were mostly based on fear-mongering about STDs and the possible outcomes of not practicing abstinence, mentioning little to nothing about sexual orientation, gender identities, or safe sex. Often in our schools, students are only taught sex ed based on their biological sex, learning very little about the experiences and bodies of other sexes. For many members of the group, most of what they know now about sex, gender, and sexual identities was learned elsewhere, often from programs through the Ethical Society or through social media. People in this group also brought up a good point. Since so much of our school's funding is from religious organizations, we're being given the sex ed that aligns with the religious views of those donors, not the sex ed we need. And these shared experiences left us with the question, what is the purpose of this type of sex ed classes in schools, and how necessary are they if they just teach us a very specific, often belief-based curriculum, rather than approach it as an opportunity to teach us about the experiences of all genders, sexualities, and beliefs? When it comes to sexual harassment, schools seem to be much more focused on a reactive approach rather than a proactive one, meaning they tend to wait until there's a reported incident of sexual harassment before making prevention a priority, if they even do so at that point. This is an urgent problem because we can't wait until somebody is hurt, scared, or traumatized to act on a very apparent issue. A large part of why sexual harassment is tolerated and or shrugged off with the boys will be boys mentality is because of the stigma around this harassment. Restrictive and judgmental dress codes for girls are often argued to be preventative measures, though this just pushes the idea that victims are asking for it, or that it's a girl's responsibility to control how other people treat her or how they look at her. Real preventative measures schools should take are to teach the reality of sexual harassment to all students in a way that shows that the responsibility does not lie on the victim, and to have, and more importantly, enforce major consequences when this happens.
Hi, my name is Caroline and my pronouns are she, her. I'm in 12th grade and this is my third year attending YES. I've gone to the Westchester Ethical Culture Society for 8 years. The second category we'll focus on are race issues. Our breakout leaders for these discussions were Jasper, Abby, and myself. Only 35% of fourth graders were reading at or above the National Assessment of Educational Progress's standard proficient level in 2019, a number that goes down to just 18% for Black fourth graders. There are measures we can take to reduce this inequity. Establishing literacy skills at an early age are instrumental to success in reading later on. Providing low-income families with books for young children and parenting classes could establish a good learning at home environment, and holding parents responsible for making sure their kids attend school could help increase attendance rates. As you see on this graph, security staff such as student resource officers or SROs or other non-SRO police officers have a large presence in public schools, particularly majority minority schools. Having SROs in schools contributes to a school to prison pipeline, which is defined as the disproportionate tendency of minors and young adults from disadvantaged backgrounds to become incarcerated because of increasingly harsh school and municipal policies, as well as because of educational inequality. An example of this is sending students to jail or court whose consequence could simply be going to the principal's office and letting the school administration handle the problem. Another focus was on mental and physical health issues in schools. The presence of SROs can also add stress and/or fear to the already stressful daily lives of students, even for students as young as elementary school ages. Because of the constant police presence, students may increasingly fear unwarranted and overly harsh punishment. This added stressor can have long-term detrimental effects on students' mental health as well. With a fierce debate over reopening schools, many teachers are forced to go back to in-person teaching without a safe reopening plan. Even though most students are not high risk, teachers of older ages can be at risk. Disabled students do not always get the accommodations that they need. To reduce this inequity, we can ensure that there are separate test times for students who need them, ramps at schools to ensure wheelchair access, readable fonts available for dyslexic students, audio and braille for blind students, and visual transcripts and interpreters for deaf or hard of hearing students. Our last topic was issues relating to the teaching of history at our schools. In breakout groups and in our main session, we discussed how our understanding of American history becomes warped by learning it through the lens of American exceptionalism. When taught this way, American history starts either at the time of Columbus's arrival to the Americas or at the beginning of the Revolutionary War. Little of pre-Columbian American history is taught, and acts allowed and/or encouraged by the US government, like slavery, Jim Crow laws, the atomic bombings on Japan, and support for anti-democratic governments in Vietnam and Central America, are ignored or shrugged off as necessary evils through the lens of American exceptionalism. Our schools should make more of an effort to teach students an unfiltered view of history, despite troubling realizations that students could come to about our country and its history. For the duration of YES 2021, we taught each other about our theme of education in American schools, the common problems we found in our school systems, from disparities in race and sexuality to bounded history or health curriculums, were often not new and affected the future lives of each student. However, the problems did not come without solutions, such as inclusive policies, modifications to the Common Core, and sexual health curriculums, removing SROs from school environments, and developing literacy skills at an early age. We also shared our personal experiences, which helped create meaningful connections. Though a virtual conference was far from ideal, by making the most out of what we had, we still had a fun and productive conference.
We're so glad that you've joined us for today's platform. If you'd like to make a donation to the new All Society Platform Fund or to the YES Conference, you can find the links in the chat. We really appreciate your support. FES, Future of Ethical Societies, invites young adults to their first virtual gathering as we process the last year and imagine the future of community. Listen to how young adults who value social justice and religious freedom persevered throughout the pandemic and continued a community in non-physical spaces. Join them for an afternoon of connecting through dialogue, relaxing and reflective activities, and live musical performances. As a group, they will continue to develop a space that nurtures and supports our community of humanist-minded young adults. The title for the FES conference is In This Together, Bravely Renewing Community, and it will be on June 20th, from 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The Encampment for Citizenship will meet online this summer. This progressive youth leadership program was founded by ethical culture leader Algernon Black in 1946 with support from Eleanor Roosevelt. Teens aged 15 through 18 who want to make a difference in their communities are encouraged to apply. During the program, participants will get a deeper perspective on social justice issues, meet activists and civic leaders, learn about how communities work and how changes are made, and use art to express social justice concerns. The application deadline is June 1st. More information can be found at encampmentforcitizenship.org. The American Ethical Union will host our 106th Assembly Addressing the Whole Truth About America virtually on Zoom. Various workshops and business working sessions will begin on June 5th, and assembly will end with the AEU business meeting on August 7th and an All Society platform on August 8th. Please follow the link in the chat for registration and a calendar of events, including business meetings, educational sessions, keynote address, awards ceremonies, and information about speakers. And August 8th will be the next All Society platform presented by the National Leaders Council. Individual societies may be having a coffee time today after platform. Please post the links in the chat if you are. Folks are free to join any of those virtual gatherings. Ellery Steinbach, will now perform the theme song from Phantom of the Opera.
Thank you, Ellery. We appreciate that you all took the time to be here today, and we truly thank you for your support of the YES Conference. There were a lot of people who worked hard behind the scenes to make sure that today's presentation ran smoothly. Except for a few AEU staff members, they were all teens. Thank you for your time and energy. Our platform has ended, but we invite you to remain in the Zoom space to ask questions and participate in discussions. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. Kat Draney from the Ethical Society of St. Louis will read them off to the panel.
Hello, my name is Kat Draney. My pronouns are she, her. Currently, we have no questions in the Q&A, but that can be found right next to the chat if you like to ask questions of any of our panelists.
I'd like to take this opportunity to, first of all, congratulate all of you. You did a beautiful job. And to thank everybody behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, because a lot of moving parts came together today, and a lot of people worked together to make sure that today went smoothly. I want to also acknowledge that Oscar Carlin was slated to announce the mindfulness moment, and I'm sorry, because of an issue on the Zoom end, we weren't able to have them spotlighted for video. And so, Oscar, I'm sorry that we weren't able to have you on. Thank you for being here.
All right, we have a few questions. Our first one is, how do people contact the current leadership of YES?
Me. I can go ahead and I will post my email address in the chat. And you can also find information about YES on the AEU website, aeu.org. And there's a bar at the top, and YES will appear in a couple of those things, what we do, and I think community. So you can drop down in either of those and find information about YES, but I will go ahead and insert my email address in the chat also. It's tcowan, TCOWAN @aeu.org.
All right, our next question is, how do you think societies could best support youth groups and grow their youth membership?
Advisors, do you have any creative ideas for how you pull youth in, or teens? What would make you interested in coming?
Well, I think that honestly depends on each individual team. So ask the teens in your community. I think oftentimes adults think it's their job to do everything for the teens, but oftentimes teens are looking for independence and control or responsibility, and asking the teens that you want to join your community what they most want is probably the best way to make them interested.
Yeah, and just, getting the word out there, both, like face-to-face talking, but also like on social media too. Like get the word out there of what the youth groups are doing.
Okay, our next question is, would YES consider sending a representative to the AEU Ethical Action Committee? This would give us the benefit of your perspective on the important issues that you raised in this presentation.
I guess I could answer that question again. Porter and I are president and vice president of YES 2021. And I think that is an amazing idea. I think that is something we could definitely do going forward, and something we should keep in mind.
What is the main draw for you that makes you participate in YES?
Definitely for me, it was the chance to like meet and interact with other teens from different ethical societies, because I grew up with all the same people who I love, but it's really an amazing opportunity to meet other fellow ethical teens.
I definitely agree, Jasper. I grew up and live in a pretty conservative area, so it's always really, really reassuring to come to a program like YES and see that there's people my age, like-minded people my age, who are concerned about the same things that I'm concerned about, so it doesn't all just feel, kind of hopeless and alone.
Our next question is, do you have any information yet about the specific timing for the fall online YES activity?
We don't have. I anticipate it will probably be in November. Most ethical societies are ramping up again after Labor Day. And so we want to let them have a chance to get their bearings, get their attendees coming and interested. So it might be the end of October, early November, but we'll be sure to set a date for that and get the information out. We had decided that it would not be as extensive as the spring conferences. There was, traveling someplace and giving a weekend is exciting and fun, but when you're sitting on your computer for a whole weekend, it's not quite as exciting. So we were thinking that probably a Saturday in the fall would be the way to go, rather than an entire weekend. This year, what we did was Friday evening, Saturday, really all day, afternoon and evening, and then Sunday afternoon and into like up to the evening. So our fall conference will be end of October, early November, and it will just be a Saturday.
All right, so then we have, great work, everyone. How many of you are interested in continuing involvement in the ethical culture after you graduate high school? Asking as a representative of FES, who is interested in seeing you all come to join us.
I can't speak for someone else, sorry. But I know that I'm definitely interested, especially since YES has been such an amazing and meaningful experience for me. I think that FES could be too.
Yeah, same here.
I would be interested in that.
I'm interested too.
Yeah, me too. It was really cool hearing about FES during the conference.
Then we have, where will the next conference be held?
Great question. We rotate I believe that was shared in the presentation that over the last several years, we've been rotating between Washington, D.C., New York, and St. Louis. And when we go to each of those cities, we spend Thursday evening in the hosting society. We have kind of a lock in there. And then on Friday, we go and do a little bit of sightseeing in the city where we are. And then Friday afternoon to Sunday afternoon, we're at our conference center, wherever that is. And 2020, so keeping to our rotation schedule, 2021 was supposed to be in New York. And we had a lot of broken hearts that we could not meet in New York. And so 2022 will be in New York, and then we'll pick up our rotation again. That's really a special, I mean, they're all special, but it's neat to be able to see the different ethical society buildings. You know, each of them is so unique. And but there's something really, you know, historic and exciting about being in the New York Society for Ethical Culture building where Felix Adler was, like where it all began. And so the teens really get a lot, and the advisors, the chaperones, get a lot out of that trip.
Another question is, were all of you involved in the Ethical Humanist Yes movement as children of Ethical Humanist members, or did any of you join as a teen on your own?
So in other words, how many?
Joined,
Yeah.
for me, I joined when I was a teen. In fact, I had just started going to the Ethical Society back in 2019 when we had the St. Louis Yes Conference. So that was a lot of fun, and stayed here ever since, and I intend to stay. So yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. Yes, conferences, only high schoolers are invited to come typically. And I know, I mean, I've been attending Washington Ethical Society since I was a baby. And growing up, I always heard about Yes. And then as a middle schooler, I got to learn more details about it and was really excited to attend my first year in 2020 of March. And so I think it's really great that teens from all over the country are able to join and talk to each other.
Are there any things that adults in ethical societies can do to be more helpful and encouraging?
I just think similar to what Levi was saying before, like giving us our independence, letting us kind of lead things where we want to go, and like letting us come to you adults when we do need help.
Yeah, and it's also been good, like, being included in conversations like this too. That's been helpful.
Yeah, I think that giving youth, whether they're the children of the society or the teens of the society, giving them a voice and making it clear that you really value their participation and their involvement in your society. I think that you'll get a lot out of that. And I think that the kids will get a lot out of that. Growing up feeling like, you know, they've really got a place where they belong, and they've got all of these extended aunts, uncles, grandparents. That's irreplaceable. In the Ethical Society of St. Louis, we have a child, elementary age, stand up and give the core values at the beginning of every platform. And that's often a child's first experience with public speaking to a group like that. It's a little thing, but it's something that exposes all generations to one another. And then there's also the aspect of funding. So if you provide funding for your ethical education programs, I know we've got a lot of like wording going on. We've got ethical education as kind of the broad term for the children's programming. Then that's only going to help. The Yes Conference is expensive to attend. And, I talked about how it rotates from different cities and states. So when it's not in your teen's state, it's very expensive to attend. We try to keep the expense, like the conference registration, to only cover whatever the conference site is charging us. And so we try to keep that around 200. I think that for DC, I had to go up to $250 a person, which still didn't honestly cover just the expenses of the conference site. But then on top of that, each attendee has travel expenses and whatever sightseeing and whatever expenses come up with that. Plus, there are the chaperones. And in the past, there have been teens who've wanted to come to Yes, but they didn't have a chaperone who could take off of work or afford the registration and the travel expense. So putting in your budget a line item for teens to be able to attend the conference is really huge. In St. Louis, we also provide a scholarship so that if a teen needs to get to the conference but really can't afford even the registration costs, then they're able to get some help with that.
I'd also like to mention that's partly why this past year we committed to making virtual Yes a reoccurring thing, is because really you just have to set aside the time to be able to show up on Zoom, and that makes it a lot more accessible for many more people.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Joy. Yeah. What was your opinion, group or individual, on public school resource officers?
Personally, I think that police officers should never be in schools. They do far more harm than good and only lead to, continuing the school to prison pipeline.
Yeah, and I think it's very unfortunate that oftentimes I've noticed that those officers get called into situations at the school that really need to be dealt with by like social workers or someone who's trained in like helping kids with mental health situations and stuff like that. So yeah, they need to rework that system, because like you're not even getting properly trained people for these situations. So. Is any effort being made to encourage Yes teens to register for the Encampment for Citizenship this summer?
For sure. And Clayson and I have been tag teaming between posting on social media and sending emails to teens. We definitely would love to have our teens represented at the Encampment for Citizenship. I mean, talk about a natural fit, right?
Have any of you considered an AEU-wide service project for Yes students?
That is not something I'm aware of having been in the plans before, but I think that sounds like a really fun opportunity to continue connections of Yes teens. So we will keep that in mind going into the future.
For sure. And the planning committee often talks about this. You know, I mentioned that on the Friday of our in-person conference, we've got some sightseeing that's built in. And we've often talked about if we could do a service project there instead or in conjunction with the sightseeing portion. And it is challenging because we've got minors who are involved, and part of the draw, honestly, for traveling to a different city is to actually sightsee. And so we would love to find a way to incorporate it all. But it's true also that now that we've got kind of this virtual gateway that we've taken advantage of, we could put something in place that way. And I want to say also that FES does an amazing job, Future of Ethical Societies does an amazing job with community service, and that's a large part of their conference.
Is there any primary social media place for Yes?
We do have a Facebook page, and it's called, it's titled Yes, Youth of Ethical Societies. And I guess because of the nature of Instagram and Twitter, we really don't have anything set up yet because we like to be able to post events and that type of thing. But if you have any advice for how we can reach the most people, because I'm aware that teens nowadays are not actually on Facebook as much as their parents are, then I would absolutely be welcome to hearing what would be best for you to get information about it. Again, my email address is tcowan, TCOWAN, at aeu.org. And I truly would appreciate any advice you have about that.
We have a question that is, to what extent would youth be interested in ethical society? Would youth be interested in ethical societies also providing technical or career training? To what extent is it important for ethical societies to help train young adults, say, for the new green economy?
Could you repeat the question? I don't see it in the Q&A.
Sure. To what extent would youth be interested in ethical societies also providing technical or career training? And is it important for ethical societies to help train young adults for a new green economy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Technical or career training, that sounds very interesting and I think would be cool, like either like an actual weekly based class or just like some sort of presentation where someone comes in and like tells us about that stuff. And yeah, I think it's important to have like some education in like how the world is advancing so we're prepared for it with like how the economy works and systems and stuff like that. So yeah, very important, I'd say.
I'd like to add that I think that providing ethical education in the format that we currently have, which is a weekly format, and currently it's an hour, but normally it's 2 hours. What we tend to do is expose people to ideas and encourage people to do further research and so forth. It would be lovely to have more opportunities to get down to that level of experience. And like Trish pointed out, sometimes our service opportunities are limited because we're dealing with minors and so many options to try out a job of sorts. Like, for example, Habitat for Humanity is usually restricted. So we don't get a lot of opportunities to try things out. We would need some sort of organized program, I think, that people would have to enroll in separately from our weekly gatherings, which are kind of reserved for exploring a wide variety of topics.
Do any of the presenters have voting privileges in their society, and is that important to you? In Baltimore, our bylaws currently require a minimum age of 18 to vote in society meetings.
I don't believe that any of the teens or the children in the ethical societies do have voting rights.
And actually it was kind of like on the edge of like my circle of consciousness, but I don't know much about the meetings actually either, so I wouldn't know about the voting rights either. So yeah.
I would add
to learn about though.
Yeah, I would suggest that one of the things that we miss out on that was provided to me when I was in youth group, and it's my own fault for not thinking of it till now, is when I was in youth group, we were actually invited to join as members of the society. We had a kind of a junior or associate type membership back then. I don't remember if they came with voting rights or not, but it was an option to kind of bridge into membership as a dues paying member. And I would think that that's something we need to go back and look at again. And this, I'm speaking, of course, for the St. Louis Society only. But I do remember being asked, would you like to be a member of the society, and given kind of an opportunity to do that.
That sounds like a good idea. Yeah.
Then we have someone asking if we can put some emails and other connection information in the chat for some follow-up. And then we have a suggestion to start an ethical society club on any college campuses. And we also have a volunteer for if any teen needs a chaperone when they're in the DC area. We have an email just for that, so thank you so much. And then we have a question. I taught in a small public school whose students had difficulties in their lives. We were fortunate to have a good security officer. If a student was having an acute issue, we could have them go to the hallway, talk to the security guard. She was like a roving counselor, calming but no punishment. Do you think something like this could be institutionalized, and why would it be useful, and would it be useful at other schools? I think that this is a good point because it's not really having like a police officer walking around, because I know in my school they're armed and they're more, I don't want to say menacing, but they're more there for protection from teens or of teens. And so having more of a counselor, someone who could actually their job is to help teens who are having difficulties, I think that would be a really good idea.
I think that something that would be important to remember if a program like that was instituted would be to try and keep that individual younger, because we have school counselors, but they're all figures of authority, and sometimes it can be hard to talk to them about issues. So if you had someone maybe in their 20s or just someone younger, then they would probably be quite a bit easier to talk to about issues like that.
Outside of FEST, does the AEU have a track for helping youth become ethical cultural leaders?
We do not have. That's a really interesting thought. We do have a former FES member who's currently in the leader track, but I love that idea of encouraging people from childhood to consider becoming AEU leaders.
Well, all of our other questions are some suggestions that I already went over. So thank you all for your questions.